or something, like, hey, get the fuck out of bed, we need you to make an apology video, and he's like still sleepy, he's like, oh fuck, okay, hey guys, sorry, and he's like rubbing his face really hard, hoping to get 1 or 2 tears to come out, but they just won't fall. He can't get the tears flowing. It seems more like he's annoyed than sad. Like, is this happening or something? Like, shit on the carpet, it's like, oh fuck, it's on the carpet, which means I'm gonna need to use like nature's miracle or something to get it off. It's a big mess. Oh Jesus.
Anytime I can make out what's going on,
yeah, but you did identify someone who was unconscious. You identified someone's lifeless body and told security to get out of it, and then you started singing to the body, and then continued on the show until it saw it. So I mean, you did identify it, and I mean, I guess you got them the help they needed, getting the crowd surfed out of there, but you didn't stop the show, even after finding back. You still continued.
I think the one of that video working closely with everyone who just started to provide by the funding, everyone help us figure this out. Yeah,
yeah, every single person involved in Astro World here needs to be held accountable. The second people started breaking through security checkpoints and climbing fences to flood the venue, they should have taken precautions to pause the concert, delay it, or something, because they were not equipped to handle that capacity, and this is the natural result of that. It's a true fucking tragedy, and everybody, Travis Scott included, needs to be held accountable for what happened here. Now, I did read reports that there was someone who injected a security guard with a needle, which caused the security guard to pass out. I don't know if there was some kind of fucking supervillain there injecting people or something, but even if that was the case, and not everything was related to crowd crush, there were still plenty of people recognizing all of these unconscious bodies and should have stopped the concert. If anything, that would be more reason to stop the concert, and they still chose not to, which is an even higher level of negligence.
Everybody continue your prayer. I mean, honestly, I could never imagine.
Fuck.
As is standard practice for apology videos, there isn't an apology. There's no I'm sorry. It's crazy. Every single fucking apology video ever, for some reason, lacks the most basic apology. I'm sorry. Nothing. None of that present here. And, I just wanted to go over it. It's not like a very informative video or anything, like, interesting, but it just shows how disconnected celebrities are, that this seems like a good idea. At no point do I get the impression he truly cares about what happened. It seems more like he's worried about potential lawsuits that he's going to face. And not potential, the inevitable lawsuits that he and his team will face. It seems like something that he was forced to make, as is pretty clear by how uninterested he looks in the video. And it's so baffling. Why even bother? He made a Twitter statement. Why did he even bother making it? Clearly doesn't seem to care that much. He doesn't even take responsibility at all. So, I mean, I just wanted to at least show this, since he did post this apology video on Instagram, and yeah, that's about it. So yeah.
Back in 2014, YouTube cringe was ubiquitous enough for it to be considered its own genre. From toxic fandoms to the creative works of 12-year-olds, entire communities formed around tearing down others' unorthodox interests. And with how eternally popular Minecraft is, it's perhaps no surprise that those of this fandom became one of the largest targets. One of the most standout examples, due to its sheer expansiveness, was Futuristic Hub. Boasting over 3 million subscribers, the channel has been uploading consistently for nearly a decade, with a current cumulative view count of over 1 billion. These videos videos, which tend to be an amalgamation of fictional characters thrown together in 3D animation software, bank off getting clicks from children recognizing their favorite cultural icons and thumbnails. While today, his most popular videos star crossovers between characters like Sonic, Baldi from P6, the Ninja Turtles, and SpongeBob, back in the day there was another ingredient to the mix: Minecraft. One of his first huge breaks on the channel came from his video where SpongeBob explored Minecraft, combining one of the most popular animated characters with arguably the most popular video game. But, of course, it wasn't enough for him to use parody law to his advantage to generate hits of his bizarre videos. What truly made him controversial was his affinity for sex appeal, creating several risque animations on the same channel one would think was intended for children. He seemingly took great pleasure in placing these models into sexual situations, creating, well, without beating around the bush, softcore Minecraft porn.
Oh, come on, man. Oh, that smells like your foot. It's not funny. Come on now. That's gross.
What about that? How's that? Does that help?
And, if that didn't convince you enough of his degeneracy, he eventually posted explicit Minecraft-themed pornography, which has since been taken down from YouTube. Thanks for scaring me of the Minecraft oral, Susan. Similar in vein to the Elsagate scandal, the combination of bizarre fanfiction and a distinctly young audience made Futuristic Hub the perfect target for both mockery and moral outrage. At a time when the average commentator was desperate to find a designated cancer of the week, it seemed like the perfect target for ridicule, and given how little of a fight similar targets had given back, they expected to have the last laugh. Well, that's where they were wrong. It probably doesn't come as any surprise that the mind-animating blocky Minecraft tits belongs to a somewhat eccentric individual, but nothing I can say right now will prepare you for just how deranged he truly is. A man so concerned with his image that he will pressure literally anyone who speaks negatively of him to redact themselves, and if they don't comply, he's more than willing to abuse legal forms and even threaten physical harm to silence his critics. Because of that notoriety, few are willing to talk about him at all. Consequently, most don't realize just how extensive his track record is. This is not a video about the Futuristic Hub channel, but rather the man behind it, Brian Murray. A story that has remained untold due to his talent of silencing critics and obfuscating his past. And while it's worked well enough up until now, it's worth pointing out that if not for his recent behavior, I would have never discovered just how deep this rabbit hole goes. So, join me as we untangle one of the strangest stories to ever come from this platform. A decade-long history of abuse, all stemming from one of the most consistently harmful people on this website. This is the world's worst YouTuber.
There is an issue with that because right now he's apparently threatening a couple of Sonic fan artists. This guy is obsessed with me, right? Like, stop photos of my sister, of my brother, of my friends. You stick this up. Now, this is what I do. I have that content, that stalker, that harasser, blocked for a reason. You don't know how many YouTube channels I've taken down in the past 12 years? And that was easily
creator Salty DK Dan wrote on Twitter that he wasn't a fan of Futuristic Hub's borderline pornography being allowed on YouTube. While he seemingly had no intentions of escalating the conflict further, many interpreted this as an announcement that he would be producing a video mocking the channel's deformities. One of these people included none other than Futuristic Hub himself. In response to the tweet, Salty received an email from the channel, which reads as follows. Good morning. This email is in reference to the tweets you made. This brand takes it as a threat. Now, you may be referencing videos from years back, but in no shape or form will you create drama toward this brand because for over 2 years this brand has been revised. I have no issue with people making videos, but not in a way to stir drama and hate. It is highly advised that you understand what YouTube is actually wanting on their website nowadays. I believe a lot of drama channels should disappear this year as the guidelines roll out. Anyhow, consider this a soft cease and desist. If you have any questions, you may email me back. Satirical videos? No problem. Just put a disclaimer. Anything meant to cause serious serious harm to the channel and or brand will result in consequences. Now, already this is rather odd. Preemptively sending a legal threat to a YouTuber for merely tweeting about them is not something a lot of, if any, other brands do. But it didn't stop there. Shortly after, a Twitter account crowning themselves as an animation god began messaging Salty, as well as others who had simply replied. It was an ardent defender of Futuristic Hub, claiming that Salty was on the attack and bully phase against one of the most famous Minecraft animators in history, who'd been around for 8 years and deserved recognition. Given the absurdity and timing of the replies, users quickly began questioning if this was the same person who had sent Salty the soft cease and desist. The account owner initially denied these accusations, of course, though previous tweets and interactions were uncovered in which they rather explicitly admitted their true identity. A zoom in on the account's avatar even reveals it was watermarked with the channel's name. After these interactions, the account was deactivated. As a result, we can't confirm without a shadow of a doubt that this was Futuristic Hub. However, when viewed in the larger context of his behavior, it becomes pretty clear that this was likely another manifestation of Brian's chronically insecure ego. The Salty DK Dan case is merely the tip of a massive iceberg of his history of threats, harassment, and even alleged swatting of other creators over the past few years. So, let's take a moment to run through some of his history. Back when he had only 13,000 subscribers, Optimus made a video critical of Futuristic Hub. He was subsequently inundated with comments across his entire channel in which Brian childishly insulted him in every video he'd ever made. But even after that, he wasn't satisfied, eventually joining the Discord server of one of Optimus's fans to argue with him. Similarly, when LS Mark had less than 10,000 subscribers, he made a video mocking the channel and its terrible animations. Upon its release, he was messaged by Futuristic Hub demanding that Mark pin a comment he'd made, claiming the entire video was satire. Someone who claims to be a friend of and representative for Futuristic Hub, Top Trends, messaged Mark saying that Futuristic Hub is open to using the DMCA takedown system on YouTube to silence critics. When asked why, he replied that Futuristic Hub only takes down videos from stupid people. When asked if he is aware of the hate comments on his videos and the amounts of people who make fun of his work, he said that, "I ignore those liberal saps. Libtards mean nothing to me. Conservative thinking is the way to go." Trump won because of people who hate my content. This isn't meant to be a knock to conservatives, but more of a note of how strangely Futuristic Hub seems to view his critics. He reckons that those who mock his Minecraft sex animations are simply left-wing. At one point, Futuristic Hub made legal threats against an artist claiming that he'd stolen a character named Snock from his channel. This is ironic given the fact that most of his videos are extremely derivative, consisting of copyrighted material that he does not own the rights to. Now, one could argue his videos would be protected under fair use, but even if true, he refused to extend those rights to others, intimidating the artist into deleting their original drawings and warranting legal action.
I wouldn't mind if they owned the original character these artists inspired off of, but you yourselves ripped off Sonic with this logic. It's not the first time they have tried to pull this stunt. One of the artists went as far as hiding, concerned they would be targeted, and in this final tweet here, so even after the artist deleted the art, which they didn't need to do for obvious reasons, they persist and tried to find their email.
But Brian's harassment doesn't just end in litigation. On May 5th, 2017, IRL streamer Ice Poseidon was swatted 5 consecutive times while being live.
So you've been getting harassed with people calling at you?
Yeah, so I do like live streams. People call and be like, "Oh, he's a gun" or something. Yeah.
Many of Ice's fans believed that Brian was responsible for this due to the fact that he was in the chat on the stream demanding people call law enforcement on him, as well as posting the address of his location. Now, it's worth clarifying that we don't know for certain if Brian was the one responsible for this instance, as we don't have access to the actual calls made. But what we can say, at the very least, is that Brian did want the police to go to him and encourage others to do so. 3 years later, streamer Emma Dorable finally spoke out about her experience with him. She alleged to have been harassed, doxxed, and swatted by Futuristic Hub in 2016. After making this tweet, her friends were messaged by him asking for her current location, as well as on Discord, where he claimed that he was going to be sending her a cease and desist via email. After getting into drama with Futuristic Hub, Keemstar claimed that he was being stalked by him repeatedly, as well as saying that he will be calling the police about Brian. He asks for anyone who has received threats from Futuristic Hub to send them to him for a police report. In response, Futuristic Hub said that he would be filing a class action lawsuit against Keemstar.
I just wanted to announce a class action lawsuit against Drama Alert. If anyone has been affected, myself included, by this shit channel, please contact me ASAP so we can get this started.
He also called Keem's local police department and filmed the entire thing before uploading it to YouTube.
Yeah, somebody called the police on me last night, and I want to verify if there's a police report.
We can do that. What address are the police sent to?
Well, actually, they called from the internet, said I was cyberbullying. His name is Daniel Keem.
A video documenting this has since been taken down due to a privacy complaint. He also attempted to encourage YouTube to delete Keemstar's channel and pay more attention to fellow drama channels.
I will not participate in any way, shape, or form in the bashing and attacks against Keemstar. These channels out there are making tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars bullying people. You guys aren't doing a thing about it. What goes through your mind when you're hiring, or other people that you hired are hiring the policy members who aren't enforcing the rules? iDubbbz destroyed Keemstar. I'm destroying Keemstar.
Leave me alone. Leave me alone. You and Brian Martin. Fuck me. I'm gonna call the police on you. Leave me the fuck alone.
Are you seeing this? Oh my god, it is lit over on YouTube right now and Twitter. We've got Grade A Under A messing around with Keemstar, exposing him for the pedophile that he possibly is.
This was all while he was claiming that he was not going to be involved in any drama with Keem in any way. In every incident, FH gets upset at people using the name of his channel in a negative light and tries to intimidate them into shutting up about him, either with a promise of legal action or some other consequence. Keep in mind that there has not been a single time when he has actually followed through with taking people to court over things they say about him online. But why does Futuristic Hub go to all of these lengths to silence critics and bully people into not talking about it publicly? To find out a little bit more about who Futuristic Hub is, let's take a look at one particular case that led me to discovering his identity. January of 2021, a small YouTuber called Wacky TV posted a video about Futuristic Hub, where he makes some jokes about him and basically just calls his content cringe. He also touched on Futuristic Hub's beef with Keemstar. Wacky played a clip of Keemstar talking about his experience with Futuristic Hub.
There's literally so many YouTubers that he's been stalking, threatening to shut down their YouTube channels. This guy is a fucking con man. I posted articles about this dude. His girlfriend used to be one of the Pie Girls. Like, I could go on and on and on. I have that con man, that stalker, that harasser blocked for a reason, because he does not leave me alone.
This video by Wacky managed to accumulate a few hundred views, which on a channel with just a few thousand subscribers isn't anything to scoff at. Following this video, Wacky TV was subject to an onslaught of harassment from Futuristic Hub, and I don't use this word lightly. It is actually absurd the lengths that this guy went to intimidate a teenager's video that had such a small number of eyes on it. This started with a comment from the channel Wildcraft, the self-admitted secret new account of Futuristic Hub. Up until this point, we've acknowledged that the brand is owned by a man named Brian Martin. However, when Wacky claimed the same thing in his video, Wildcraft accused him of being misleading. They claimed that the actual owner of the accounts is a woman named Holly, and that her husband Brian was entirely uninvolved. Shortly after this, Wacky received an email from Brian reiterating that he was not the owner of the channel. He then goes on to try and threaten Wacky into removing the video. In a further email from Brian, a few stand-out quotes include, "You a tough guy, Wacky? You think your friend is a tough guy too? You know how many YouTube channels I've taken down in the past 12 years? Enough to make many people afraid of me. Both you and your shithead cunt of a friend, Larix, leave that poor woman alone, or I will personally see to it that every single one of your careers ends faster than you can blink." As if that wasn't enough, Futuristic Hub then had Wacky's subsequent video of other interactions taken down via another privacy complaint. For whatever reason, Brian Martin doesn't want anyone to think that he is behind the Futuristic Hub channel, despite the inordinate amount of evidence proving otherwise. But why go to such extreme lengths to have the video taken down? Clearly, the motive here wasn't just that something negative was being said about the brand. Otherwise, he would have resorted to this lie years earlier. There must be something more serious being hidden. So, let's go back to Brian. Brian Martin, a man who many have credited over the past few years with the channel's unhinged rants about critics and Muslim people. Why doesn't he want the brand tied to him anymore? And could it have have something to do with his antics outside of the futuristic hub brand? The effort to answer that question led me first to a channel simply titled Video Games. With a multi-million subscriber count, it's a relic of a forgotten time on YouTube. As a community channel, it operated as an accumulation of content from various creators who would make videos to be showcased on the account in exchange for exposure, as well as unspecified sums of money. And with how large of an audience it had, this entailed some pretty sizable transactions. Well, it turns out that Brian was one of the individuals who managed the channel. In 2016, a lawsuit was filed over control of the Video Games account. Its conclusion ruled that Brian, as well as one of his business partners, were guilty of committing fraud by avoiding payments. They also were found to not have informed other owners of their proceedings. This ruling meant that Brian, as well as Marco Princip, owed the plaintiffs a total of $20 million. In the wake of this verdict, several figures in the gaming community came forward to state that they'd been scammed by the channel as well. This included Vicstar, Quibblecop, Whiteboy 7th Street, Lost in Peace, and Ali A, with Brian and Marco owing each of them thousands upon thousands of dollars. Given their previous conflict, it's perhaps no surprise that Keemstar reported on the situation in April of 2016.
The channel with 3.3 million subscribers is a community channel that was owned by Marco and Brian Martin, aka Futuristic Hub. The two have been sued for $20 million successfully.
Not wanting to let him have the last laugh, 3 months later, Brian uploaded an animation channel in which he depicts Keemstar receiving an anal probe in Minecraft. Upon reaching out to a former of the Video Games channel, he verified that the Brian Martin sued in the Video Game suit was also the owner of Futuristic Hub. He claims that Brian fled the country to escape consequences of the lawsuit and put the channel in his wife's name. And although it makes sense, I don't want to just take his word for it. I need a little more proof than this. Thankfully, that proof is available in the form of court transcripts. During litigation regarding the Video Games channel in 2016, Brian Martin was asked about the various YouTube channels that he operates, and when asked if he was the owner of the Futuristic Hub channel, he replied plainly in court, yes. This is available in public court documents, which anyone can access right now. In addition to this, Brian has done countless interview segments as himself while representing the Futuristic Hub channel.
You want to know why I wanted to do Minecraft porn or Minecraft sex? A long time ago, well, this is why I did it, and a lot of people are calling me a Minecraft porn animator or Minecraft sex director or something.
He's also posted his own face on YouTube while lamenting over what he sees as being the hardships of a YouTube animator. However, since then, Brian has claimed in court under threat of perjury that he is not actually the owner of the Futuristic Hub channel.
What does she do on YouTube?
He's the owner of Futuristic Hub.
Is she now?
Yes.
When did she become the owner of Futuristic Hub?
Always been the owner of Futuristic Hub.
Always?
Always. She's 20 years old. Yes. She makes kids animations.
Suddenly, his attempts at deleting years of evidence proving his own involvement make sense, and perhaps shed some light on his previous outbursts. Let's go back to Wacky TV, and when he received the initial comment from Polly, or the Wildcat channel. Shortly after, he was reached out to by its associated Twitter account. Polly attempted to convince him to remove the video and claim that Brian was not the owner of the Futuristic Hub channel. After bringing up the court documents, the account began melting down, saying stop over and over again. It's actually kind of scary, and you have to wonder if the person behind this account is okay, as they appear to be in the middle of a mental breakdown in this high schooler's messages. Shortly after this freakout, Wacky received another email from Brian. Here, he once again begs for them to leave Brian alone. He says that the lawsuit is not actually a real or fair lawsuit. He was sued for no reason. Stay away from the plaintiffs. They will hurt you. Wacky later went on to appear on Tommy C's channel for an interview about Futuristic Hub, a video which has since been removed from YouTube due to a privacy complaints. Brian then sent Tommy an email to brag about having his video removed.
Suck those balls! You got dick smacked right across the face. I warned you. Don't ever cross me again, or worse will come. See you around.
Emma Dorable was messaged on January 18th of this year about Futuristic Hub from the same account that did the talking to Wacky TV. Here, Ollie claims that they are the owner of the Futuristic Hub channel, and that Brian was merely a manager who had helped with voice acting in the past. To prove this, they cited a supposed face reveal the account had posted on the community tab. This is, again, an attempt at misdirection. They want to lead people away from the idea that Brian had any serious meaningful involvement in the channel, because, hey look, there's an official face reveal on the channel. It couldn't possibly be Brian. But the interviews, archival videos, tweets, and even court documents would indicate otherwise. He's lying. And furthermore, if you try pointing this out or documenting his history online in any meaningful way, you'll have your attempts removed and quickly be met with threats. At this point, we've reached promises of frivolous litigation, allegations of swatting, bizarre Minecraft fetishism as a gotcha, mental breakdowns upon reference to their impending legal troubles, and serial harassment against critics no matter their size. Once again, when Wacky made this video, he had just 2,000 subscribers, and I doubt he's making anything substantial off of YouTube. Brian, on the other hand, runs a channel that has at the very least made a few $100,000 in ad revenue, and this is me being extremely conservative. In reality, he's easily made millions. And if I were to stop here, we would still have a bizarre portrait of the man, Brian Martin. He's a coward, obfuscating the fact that he owns a Futuristic Hub channel despite the overwhelming body of evidence from him suggesting otherwise. He's instructed his wife to take fault instead, and is collaborating with her to convince children who expose his wrongdoing to take down their videos. And when they don't comply, he openly abuses the privacy and copyright systems in place to force them to stop mocking him. I could honestly stop here, and it would be enough to condemn this man and his activities on YouTube. What most people don't realize is that Futuristic Hub isn't the first channel Brian's had on YouTube, and it's what he did before his Minecraft sexcapades that truly expose how delusional he truly is. Allow me to introduce you to Life in a Tent. Around 2010, one of the most common forms of content on YouTube was the rant genre. Think of this as a predecessor to what we know today as the commentary community. Rant channels were essentially blogs from other creators where they gave their thoughts on current events and other YouTubers.
Your wife, I believe, is actually an aquatic animal called a whale. I don't know how you're keeping her alive outside of a water tank, but good job, man. That's some, let's call it the Discovery Channel. They're going to be interested in that.
Well, one of these rant channels was called Life in a Tent, run by a much younger Brian Martin. Here, like many of his peers, Brian would give his thoughts on other YouTubers and the various happenings within the community. But, unlike that, by the end of his run as Life in a Tent, Brian had become one of the most hated people on the platform. The channel was created on January 14th of 2010 and was first a place for Brian to upload skits and by-the-books reaction videos. However, his original content didn't quite manage to garner the traction that he desired, so he began to resort to tricks, exploiting the system in order to get as many clicks as possible. Nowadays, a video's success in the algorithm is largely determined by click-through rates and the audience's retention. This means it's important not just that the viewer be interested in the thumbnail, but also the video itself. Things were different back in the day, and because of it, clickbait became an epidemic on the platform. Brian was one of the largest offenders of this. He'd decorate his content to make it appear as if it were the viral video that many people wanted to click on. Upon clicking, however, they'd be met with his face. He would then preface the viral clip before playing it, and then wrap up the video with his thoughts. This was a smart move in theory, because it not only misled viewers, but also extended his watch time, giving more opportunity for his video to be promoted by the website. And they definitely were promoted, as he began racking up hundreds of thousands of views. With his newfound success, Brian then began looking into making money off of this venture, launching a campaign for YouTube to accept him into their, at the time, just launched YouTube Partner Program. Not willing to accept his status as an unmonetized creator, Brian recruited his friends and fans to spam YouTube staff to the point that they actually let him in, with the Life in a Tent channel being deemed eligible for monetization. But even this wasn't enough for Brian, who wished to make a living off the platform. With his videos now having ads placed on them, Brian began employing bot accounts to further promote his videos. This, combined with his clickbait, finally allowed him to make substantial income from his channel. But naturally, that influx of attention and public campaigning drew the ire of his peers, as other rant channels began looking to criticize him. This included the now deceased Happy Cabby, who generated thousands of views pointing out the misleading nature of Brian's channel.
So you're just talking about the video. You're not actually showing the video. Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to hear your opinion on the video. I was actually hoping to see the scary prank gone horribly real bad. Okay, so Life in a Tent, I hope now you understand what YouTube is talking about when they are talking about misleading thumbnails. I hope that you get it. If you don't, Send me a message, I'll be glad to explain it to you.
Perhaps one of the first instances of a now familiar technique, Brian attempted to drown out critics by spamming his own comment sections with random, unrelated information via a number of bot accounts. This was to make it more difficult for detractors to influence his viewers, although in the end, it proved ultimately ineffective. In 2010, a 14-year-old YouTuber named Eric Douglas momentarily became the center of attention when he uploaded a video declaring war against all who opposed Justin Bieber. As you'd expect for a kid his age, he makes laughably extreme threats, such as claiming that he'd hacked one of the site idol.
They're gonna get your IP and I can get this information. They're gonna find out who you are, the users of the IP, where you live, and we're gonna get your photo and we're gonna blast it on the internet, okay? All on our site. It will be full of Justin Bieber haters. We'll have your phone number, your address, all this stuff. And we can get, you're probably getting a lot of prank calls and stuff as well, and I'm sure that's the last thing you want, okay?
With the video going to accumulate over 1 million views, the rant community viewed it as a threat to free speech. Be it to capitalize on a viral subject or out of genuine moral principle, Brian uploaded a now lost video responding to him. Many who viewed it at the time felt that he went too far, as he threatened to physically assault Eric. In response, he alluded to legal action, claiming that they'd committed libel. Thankfully, the joke would end up being on Brian, as Eric eventually outed himself as a troll who'd made the videos as rage bait. In 2011, a massive earthquake occurred in Japan that was of such a high magnitude that it was followed by a tsunami. An estimated 20,000 people died, and close to 500,000 were forced to evacuate. Hoping to be one of the first to the story, Brian uploaded a video to his channel attempting to break news of the tragedy. While this alone doesn't seem atypical of a news channel, he closed out the video by saying that his fans should like the video for an epic earthquake.
Anyway, thumbs up this video for epic earthquake. And I'm not trying to make a joke of this. This is a pretty epic-sized earthquake. It's at 8.8.
Naturally, this didn't go over super well with the community, as people began pointing out the exploitative nature of his content. It opened up the criticism against his entire channel, as people made video after video railing on him. Following this, he was challenged to a debate by fellow YouTuber Blackbuster Critic, in which Brian ended up making himself look like a fool with his very poor defenses. The infamous debate with Blackbuster also managed to get the attention of a lot of other channels, including Shoehornhead. In an now-deleted video, she claims that he is one of the worst people on the platform and that he should leave.
You deserve all the hate you are getting. You bring it upon yourself. Get the fuck off the internet before you hurt yourself or hurt someone else or cry more. Put your damn shoe on your head again. That was hilarious. You are just a terrible human being. No one likes you. No one likes you!
As public opinion of Life and Intent began to shift, people also began to scrutinize Brian more, and in due time, Brian's past grew to haunt his presence as a creator. Pages on Encyclopedia Dramatica and the Rational Wiki were started to document his history of strange and malicious behavior on the internet. At first, it was simply embarrassing posts, such as when he complained about his penis size and asked if there was any way to increase it on a bodybuilding forum. But, soon enough, users began to discover less intrinsic misfortunes. It was discovered that prior to his YouTube endeavor, Brian had been involved in a multitude of illegitimate business practices. This, in particular, involved a site titled MrCashGift.com dedicated entirely to promoting his scam. Even just in reading the site's front page, it should raise several red flags of fraudulent activity. Welcome, and thank you for visiting the MrCashGift.com website. Right here, at this very time, you are looking for something to do online. Something that is going to change your life right here, right now. Well, let me show you something that is working for me and many others. Let me show you how to start receiving $500 to $1,000 or more in cash right to your door. I mean, it just sounds like a scam, right? But how do we know that this is an illegitimate business practice? Well, apart from the news reports about it, Brian himself later admitted that it was illegal.
And what you're doing, you're talking about the whole cap scams? Listen, buddy, I got out of that a long time ago because I got scammed myself. But you don't know that. Other people don't know that.
That's still relevant. You know why? Because you still presented the scam to your subscribers.
And no, I didn't. No, where do you see that Life and Intent presented the cap scam?
I saw the video.
As users began to shine a bright light on Brian's dark past, locale sites such as Encyclopedia Dramatica started to archive his long history of internet misconduct. Given that this entailed documentation of past scams, legal threats, and other public outbursts, he was desperate to have them removed. In 2011, a Facebook page entitled Life Ends in a Tent was created to spread awareness of Brian, while also mocking him. In response, he began slandering each of its moderators individually, as well as mass reporting their accounts until it was deleted. None of this, however, would be enough to stop the inevitable repercussion of his actions. In October of 2011, the Life in a Tent channel was terminated due to multiple severe violations of YouTube's policy against spam and misleading content. Of course, you'd be foolish to think that he'd simply give up there. In fact, all this wouldn't even begin to compare to his most elaborate attempt to strike back at his critics. A stunt so scandalous that it even received news coverage. It's a story that involves stalking, nearly $1,000 in metric manipulation, and someone who he thought to be the love of his life. A major source of controversy that I've neglected to mention up until this point was Brian's girlfriend at the time, Megan Lee. With 5 YouTube channels of her own, you can probably infer that she was someone that valued quantity over quality. Megan was infamous at the time for being a reply girl, a creator, typically female, who abused YouTube's video response feature to get views. Much in the same way that Brian abused the algorithm, masquerading his content as viral videos, reply girls would copy the tags and descriptions of the original to ensure their video was recommended next. Rather than use misleading thumbnails, they'd edit a still from their video to appear more enticing. This ranged from wearing low-cut shirts to photoshopping their cleavage. She became so synonymous with the reply girl name that to this day, a search of the term brings up 2 very unflattering caricatures of her. In many ways, Brian and Megan were a parasitic power couple, with the former even being responsible for the latter's enhanced thumbnails. Also, like her boyfriend, Megan was just as prone to outbursts, becoming infamous herself for responding to competitors with death threats. Do not copy my description. It is rude and disrespectful. If you ever try me, bitch, I will make sure you die in cold fucking blood. I know where you and your family live. I'm not fucking kidding. You don't see me fucking with you in your life, so don't fuck with me. If I ever see that you do this again, I will have you hacked. That last sentence is important. While unlikely to follow through with the threat of cold-blooded murder, her claim of having the competition hacked was not just plausible, but perhaps far more genuine than even the recipient believed at the time. While it's uncertain who this message was directed towards, a reasonable guess would be a YouTuber simply known as the Reply Girl. Throughout 2011, the couple spent months harassing her simply because she was an on-site competitor. Likely to give Megan an upper hand, they demanded she begin censoring her thumbnails, and went so far as to stalk her Facebook on sock puppet accounts. She also publicized the Reply Girl's personal traumas, such as a deceased ex-partner. They even attempted to make a formal argument to YouTube to have her removed, apparently not realizing that Megan would necessarily be caught in the crossfire. This wasn't a one-time incident either. They repeated this pattern over and over again, demanding a Reply Girl stop doing viral video reviews because Megan owned it. Maybe they were right. As mentioned before, Megan became synonymous with the genre as a figurehead. So, in a way, she did own it. As a result, when the public began to lambaste Reply Girls for exploiting the algorithm, this became a double-edged sword, as many then directly satirized her and her image.
Hey everybody, I saw a video.
Anyway, this goes out to Megan Speaks, the Reply Girl, whoever the fuck is making these videos. I'm sorry, when I click on a video, I want to see maybe, some related videos that have something to do with Minecraft or something else, and all I see is your tits or your Photoshop enhanced tits over here on this freaking the side for related videos. It annoys the fuck out of me.
In early 2012, the couple began fighting back against the onslaught of mockery directed towards Megan. Upset that creators such as the Yogscast and Oni NG were liking videos that mocked her, she attempted to pull strings behind the scenes to have them punished. Using her connections at Machinima, she emailed a representative asking to have the video removed. They responded that they would have the thumbnail strike for using her likeness. Unsatisfied that it wasn't entirely deleted, however, Brian took to Twitter to threaten VidCon. He writes that VidCon will not be fun this year, noting that they'll survive the threats, but will need better security. This was seen as significant enough of a threat that Hank Green himself commented on the video, stating that they'd be taking appropriate steps to dealing with them. Less than a week later, a series of leaked Skype chat logs would reveal the full extent of Brian and Megan's attempts to have their competitors terminated from YouTube. These leaks would be covered extensively in an article by the Daily Dot, where they were compared to a modern-day equivalent of Bonnie and Clyde. From the leaks, Brian can be seen a day after the email to Machinima was sent plotting to have the Yogscast and other critics IP banned from the site. His plan was to pay to have their videos view botted in order to make their growth appear illegitimate to administrators. An email receipt shows that he paid $920 for 500,000 views to be distributed to their targets. The article didn't end its investigation there, however. The author then details their track record of botting, even noting that both of them had been previously banned from the site for spam and deceptive practices. They then revealed that they reported all of their findings to YouTube directly. Scared of the couple, they asked to be kept anonymous, stating simply, botting isn't welcome here, so we're working to get this resolved quickly. In 2012, Brian returned to YouTube on a number of different accounts, wanting to rebuild his brand in some way. However, all of these attempts were unsuccessful. As of that time, everyone on the platform still remembered all of the crazy shit he had done and his very strange activities on and off platform. It was at this time that the Futuristic Hub channel was created, taking off in the following years. It's also believed that Brian and Megan split up at some point in 2018 or 2019, as he is currently married to the aforementioned Holly. While he has managed to create a new brand, Brian evidently has been unable to move on from his typical behavior of making bad content and then crying when people don't like it. As shown before, this has since totaled to a mountain of terrible shit he's done to his critics. All stuff he wants to remain hidden, which I guess I understand. If I had done this many terrible fucking things, I definitely want it to be hidden as well. I definitely wouldn't harass kids online when they make fun of me. I definitely wouldn't send them fake legal threats and tell them that I would try to ruin their careers. But Brian obviously does, because his ego is so fragile that he can't stand someone calling his cringy animations, well, cringy. If it hadn't been for what happened to Wacky TV, it's unlikely that I would have even looked into this story and the long list of shenanigans that Brian has gotten himself into. Instead, in his attempts to hide away from people who don't like what he does, he only opened the door for a plethora of other information about him to get out. And, believe it or not, this is only a portion of the information available about Brian and his twin brother and the various crimes they have been responsible for over the years. Believe me, folks, some of the most damning material is yet to come. But more on that in part 2. Thanks for watching. I've been Turkey Tom, and until next time, leave me alone.
This video's been about 8 years in the making. I've always tried to think how to cover it, but I'm worried that I'll really under-deliver. No, not that one. Anyways, I wanted to talk about one of the best shows of all time that you probably haven't heard of. And years later, it was remade, and for the most part, a complete dumpster fire. But first, I do want to say this video is very especially to people that enjoy quick serotonin hits from famous Chinese social media. If you want something less thought-provoking and philosophical, I've started up a second channel full of Twitch highlights with moments like this.
You have my permission to die.
Oh my goodness! Oh, 2 Oscars! 2 Oscars! There's a video on there right now of me building this PC. It was very fun. I'll be uploading on their weekly Twitch streams every couple days, but to everyone with above 300 IQ, let's begin the video. Picture this. Cynical coming home from school, turns on the TV, BBC has its news, ITV has some period drama that
nobody under 30 or a woman watches. And Channel 5 has bailiffs knocking on people's doors, being passive aggressive.
I was talking about human rights against the evil power. Evil power.
The judge's power.
Where's Kathy?
He has written that warrant. I'm sorry, I didn't know. After contemplating why we even pay a TV license, I switched to Channel 4 and see this bizarre trailer of people running up and down yellow corridors. I mean, it got my attention, didn't really understand any of it, and then a couple days later came another trailer.
It's a comic. It's a graphic novel. It's called The Utopia Experiments.
It's like opening a door to another world. It's opening the door to reality. Who? What? Why? People are dying. Tables are accepted. I don't think so. Nothing is a win to the CIA.
And this is when I was hooked. And the thing is, there's already so many conspiracy theories out there. I think I'm a converted terrorist. Where the numbers mason. And where the other drugs going? But this felt different. The cinematography and colour palette for one, which I'll get into soon. But most importantly, it was on Channel 4. To my non-UK viewers, which is most of you, you probably only know about Channel 4 for the woman saying to the man, so what you're saying is...
Useful.
But Channel 4 was created to aim at the fringes of society. So basically to appeal to complete degenerates like myself. UK TV's gotten a lot better recently with shows like Bodyguard. But in the early 2010s, there was a huge gap for young adult content. It was either murder mystery, hospital drama,
This is better than Angry Birds.
or men screaming bodily fluids out in public.
That was a brave.
It's a 4.2. Alright, I am doing UK TV a bit dirty there. That was 2006. But you can still see how huge the age gap was. And Channel 4 capitalised on this with shows like Black Mirror, although that's not as good now, and The In-Betweeners, which perfectly encapsulate the awkward phase of young adulthood with just a dash of spite.
How's that, Phil? Phil? It's just because the dance is outside of school time, so I assumed.
Well, you assumed wrong, Will. Very wrong.
Sorry.
Utopia was created by Dennis Kelly, who is mostly known for theatre work, and directed by Mark Munden, and got the green light to commission 6 episodes from Channel 4. Now, 6 episodes sounds pathetic, but keep in mind, the UK has a much smaller budget compared to its American counterpart. Look no further than The Office, with the US episodes going up to 28 a season, while the UK only having consistently 6, not including the 2 Christmas specials. I know there's a huge resurgence of smaller shows being recommended now, and people have that smug attitude of, oh, I told you it was going to roll on.
I mean, get real.
That is exactly what I'm doing here, and I'm not afraid to admit it. If Breaking Bad can be shilled to everyone, I could do the exact same here. Well, I'm not out of touch, you are.
I'm not the street guy, yo.
Okay, Boomer. I'm going to briefly explain the opening to the show to give you an idea how it all works. We get an opening with a wide static shot of farmland, while the radio talks about the skyrocketing prices of food.
The government is coming under increasing pressure to take urgent action to reduce the soaring cost of food.
We cut to a comic shop just after closing hours. The camera shifts focus to 2 men entering the shop and closing the shutters behind them. One of them pulls a lead pipe out of a bag. It's already blatantly obvious what's going to happen, but just stick with me here. The larger man asks where a comic is he's recently sold to someone, while the thinner man kills one of the staff with a pipe. And this is what I love. Look how he sets up that man to kill him, literally taking his arm and instructing him to turn around. They didn't run in here like it's a heist. Alright, everyone get down on the ground and no one gets hurt. This is a slow but progressive takeover. And even seeing someone battered to death on the floor, the others barely move. I mean, in reality, would you? We all fantasize about being in this situation, like stopping an attacker, but in reality, without prior training or massive leg work on your fight or flight, most of us would just stand there helpless to do anything but be a passive observer, just hoping that you're not next.
Can I go? Can I just go, please?
Yeah, and then this show's amazing soundtrack slowly kicks in, distorted and heavy breathing, perfectly encapsulating the scenario. Your shop, the place you've worked at for so many years, in the span of about 35 seconds, has been turned into your prison with no way out. They cause a gas leak to make it look like it's an accident, and this is where that rare amount of black comedy slips in. The gospel. I like that. Did I mention this was a black comedy, by the way? That means it's funny, but also sad. So already we're given three main plot points. What is Utopia? Why do they want it? And most importantly,
Who is Jessica Hyde?
you've probably noticed how different the show is filmed to more conventional dramas, and that colour palette. These are both the ideas of director Mark Munden. In a lot of traditional shows, you have these static shots of people talking, and it cuts back and forth, and unless I find the dialogue incredibly engaging, this just puts me to sleep.
How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
Half the job with visual media is making the shots compelling, and one can't work without the other. Just look at Better Call Saul. The show constantly experiments with different framing and takes, and this has the ability to express feelings without a single word being said. You can make the character feel helpless and lost, not just by tying them up, but by filming at their level. There's this great scene in the very first episode where Saul goes into an elevator while a beaten up trash can is brought into focus. He goes into a meeting while the camera moves above his head. His confidence is soaring, only to be rejected and return to that same trash can where he takes out all of his aggression, letting us know that this is a continuous cycle he keeps fulfilling. Utopia tries experimental cinematography in its own way, pushing characters away from the center, and when they are in the center, characters are shot further away to be perceived smaller. It really helps build on that paranoia that anyone could be watching, and you pay attention to the background of the characters just as much as them. One thing you'll notice about the characters is headroom. Most shots give characters massive amounts of headroom, where their scalp will usually peak in the middle of the frame instead of near the top. Okay, keep that headroom. No, fuck, we should have overcome someone. Let's put the 18 men on and do the same thing. Think of it as the polar opposite of good time. In that film, most scenes were close-up shots that made the film feel claustrophobic and tense. I remember watching that film, and there's a scene where a bunch of characters have an argument, and I ended up holding my breath because of just how overstimulating it was.
Sorry, Mom.
And that could have only been achieved with such close-ups. Utopia can produce the same feeling, but by doing the polar opposite with wide shots, giving that dreamlike ambience combined with the color palette. Most shows are colored in the traditional way of red, blue, and green, but Mark opted for the opposite colors: cyan, yellow, and magenta. That's my color.
This is my beautiful orchid. I call her purple.
Quoting himself, his interest in Doris Day films in the 1950s, that bright, extravagant color palette that purposely goes against the main theme of the show: violence. Sometimes even looking like a Wes Anderson film or Mirror's Edge with how saturated the colours are. The skies in the show are usually bright blue, when in reality, British skies are miserable and grey. Well, I'll prove it to you right now.
Oh yes, just look at this British weather. Look how sunny it is. Have a look at that. Such clear, beautiful skies in White Britain.
Some sheep over there. These exaggerated colours play into the main MacGuffin of the show, Utopia Comic, by the show looking exactly like a graphic novel with these saturated colours and extreme blood and violence, almost looking like an art form. The show knows we're desensitised to violence in media. We've seen so much of it. You get the Raygun Easter egg in World at War? Look at all the limbs blow off. A lot of shows and films aim for a more washed out colour palette to indicate, yes, you are watching the 50th reboot of your beloved franchise.
I'm not important.
But here, everything's presented in bright colours, tricking you into a false sense of security for when things actually go wrong. And also giving off this clinical feeling that everything is artificial and deeply wrong. The only comparison I could think of is if the Combine won again in Half-Life 2. And despite this disconnect, the show remains incredibly grounded, with characters acting realistically and within reason, to the point that they become their own worst enemy, because, you know, let's face it, if we had the future of humanity put on our shoulders, I don't think we'd cope very well.
Very often in sort of conspiracy thrillers, they're cops, they're people that have got something to do with politics, or, you know, and they're also very capable, or they become very capable. And I wanted our guys not to be that capable, because I don't think I am. So I sort of thought, what would it be like if it was happening to me? I would sort of not know what to do, and I think, who do I talk to make it stop?
And to accompany all of this is the phenomenal soundtrack by Cristobal Tapia de Veer. Most soundtracks in media don't really have anything memorable apart from maybe the title card, but here every track is iconic. Playing into the cinematography and colour palette, the soundtrack invokes this otherworldly feel to it. Cristobal took normal sounds and distorted them, reverbing them until they sounded almost dark and sinister. Even the more upbeat soundtracks have a tone of malice to them, like Calm Before the Storm. One of the soundtracks he literally made by slapping rhino shit with drumsticks. I am not making that up. After Utopia, he became immensely popular, scoring films like The Girl with All the Gifts and a few one-offs like Black Mirror, and the resemblance from Utopia carries over to all his future work. He also did some work with Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams, specifically the episode with Bryan Cranston in it. So technically, this is the closest my favourite composer will ever get to a Breaking Bad crossover. One thing I love about the soundtrack, it's only included when it's needed. For scenes of characters talking about getting to know each other, there's usually no accompanying music. And this is a note out there, by the way. You can't have scenes with no music. You're allowed to. You know that, right? You don't need to add 9-gag trolling sneaky snitch music over everything.
What do you do?
Well, think of the least interesting thing you can think of.
IT. Oh, no fucking way.
Way fucking way. I also live with my mom.
There's a scene where two of the main characters have sex, completely shit-faced, and it is just so awkward, and they don't even get anywhere and have to give up. And the lack of soundtrack here really helps show how just raw and uncomfortable this is. Jesus, I just realised I haven't even explained the premise of the show yet. Okay, alright, anyways. The plot of Utopia revolves around an anonymous messaging board. Stay with me here, alright? Don't click off. This is the elevator pitch. I don't have to Saul Goodman myself because you click off the video. The board is dedicated to a graphic novel called The Utopia Experiments, a book that has predicted several huge epidemics and disasters before they happened. The book seemed to have missed one. A recent one, I think, apparently. The story follows some of the users. Becky, a Welsh girl who was on track to become a doctor, but her life has been consumed by the book ever since her dad died of an incurable illness that it predicted. Alexandra Roach does an amazing job portraying an irate Welsh girl who doesn't realise she's in over her head until it's too late. Ian, an IT consultant who's not living life to his fullest. I know that sounds like every Disney princess ever, someone that just wants more, but trust me, he probably has one of the best arcs out of all the characters. Ian is played by Nathan Stewart Jarrett, most known for playing as brash but overall compassionate offender Curtis from Misfits, stuck in a young offenders program. Misfits was the predecessor to Utopia, but Channel 4 still weren't confident on putting a millennial-based drama on their main network, so Misfits originally was on their sister channel E4. Curtis and Ian both share similar qualities, like their caring for others hidden beyond sarcasm and irony, and both wanting a more fulfilling life, even if their backgrounds are incredibly different.
I do have one question. Martin's penis, is that a meaty taste or is it more salty? Very witty, Ian. So smart. Just not think about it and get on with the job in hand. Yeah, well, I've got a joke for you.
You're 28 years old and you still live at home with your mum. That's a laugh.
You've also got Grant, a kid that laughs online as a Giga Chad with a Porsche and all the women he could want, when in reality living on the breadline with a mum who frequently gets abused, having to learn how to survive on his own, being incredibly self-sufficient by making mayonnaise sandwiches, and like a true lad, drinking at the age of 12. One smart thing about him, he knows exactly how to use his age against people. One scene he's trying to break into a car, gets caught and tries to front, only to then play the sympathy card, which lowers the guy's defense, and when they shake on an apology, rubs his hand in dog shit.
Who's shit round me? Fucking animal! You're shit now, isn't it?
Played by Oliver Woolford, he's probably one of the few child actors that actually knows how to play a child. He plays on people's goodwill and uses it against them. Ironically, he's not too different from the two killers that in turn use their authority to order people around to basically paint their own suicides. And Wilson, last name Wilson, a man so unbelievably paranoid, he's basically Windows Firewall in real life.
And every IP address here is masked and encrypted to avoid detection. I'm invisible.
You do know you've used your real name on our forum, right?
I would believe that's a real name. I can lower my heart rate, pick locks, and if I was handcuffed to a radiator, I could escape by dislocating both my thumbs.
He's played amazingly by a deal actor who won a nomination for Best Supporting Character in Utopia. I don't want to get too much into his character arc here, but he was one of the main reasons I kept glued to the screen. I've never seen a more humanized character go through so many twists that are unfathomable but almost completely believable.
So Wilson's your real name?
What do you use all this stuff for? Expunging all trace of myself from the World Wide Web. I have, over the past 5 years, using various international laws, data protection acts, and internet know-how, wiped all trace of me from the world. Why? Delusional, paranoid, schizophrenic.
Quirks removed, these are all incredibly mundane people who've had their life put on hold from their obsession with the manuscript, not being able to move on because they've tricked themselves into thinking that it holds something worthwhile for them.
What I like is that the group, I think a group of very, very normal people dealing with really, really extraordinary events and watching what people do under stress and strain, I think it's quite, as an actor, it's very, very interesting to play those roles.
The main theme of the show is surveillance and how anything you put out there can be used against you. That's why, for a promotional campaign, Channel 4 would go through journalists' Twitter accounts, picking out old pictures that they most definitely forgot posting, and would get a shot to the system when they get a video from someone from the show explaining what the inside of their house looks like, which, of course, terrified most of them.
They're after you. Listen to me. They're after you.
They begin the episode by organising a meet-up when someone else in their group, Bijan, does the equivalent of a Discord @here and sees who replies. He claims he has part 2 of Utopia, which was never published. This is probably the only scene in the entire show that I actually dislike. The way the text is shown from the message board, it just comes across as very conventional and uninspired. I would have much preferred a more literal interaction with the computer, a la Mr. Robot, but, you know, one scene I don't like out of the whole show. Like, that's good. That's really good. Not great, not terrible. They organised to meet in a pub wearing blue to stand out, which goes about as well as you'd think, with blue probably being the most common colour people wear, apart from black. This again plays into how awkward and out of their depth these people are, and it really helps humanise them. Utopia also has this tendency to kill off characters without any kind of notice. Like, for example, Bijan, that I just mentioned, well, he got intercepted by the 2 guys from the opening, and they lull him into a false sense of security like they did with the comic store workers. This scene with the gun to his head goes on for about a minute and a half, with each step excruciatingly slow, constantly being asked where Jessica Hyde is, to which he has no idea who that is. And of course, when it looks like they're just about to let him go, you thought he was going to be part of the main cast? Nope, didn't even make it to the pub. Also, fun fact, him falling off the roof was an actual coordinated stunt. Don't believe me? Look at this man who filmed it with possibly the thickest Liverpool accent of all time.
Oh my God. Yeah, he's got to be too, hasn't he? Oh my God. Two flops be flop.
The kid, Grant, took the initiative to go directly to Bijan's apartment, stealing part 2 of the manuscript, but not without cutting himself on the door, which they used to collect his DNA. And from this alone, we know that these people aren't working alone and are part of a much bigger group that also want the manuscript. Running completely parallel to this entire story is Michael Dugdale, a senior civil servant working for the health department. He has nothing to do with Utopia, but is still dragged into the conspiracy regardless, having a much larger role to play later on. This was even foreshadowed in the original trailer, as Dugdale was always shown to be on his own and not with the main cast. Played by Paul Higgins, he comes off as cowardly and almost easy to hate, but has just enough sympathy for the audience to realise that we'd do the exact same thing in his situation. Compared to the other group's humbler beginnings, we see Dugdale is already in the shit, stuck in a sleazy motel planning to kill himself by pill overdose after finding out a girl he's cheated on his wife with is now pregnant.
I thought Ted.
His wife calls him, having no idea what's going on, and Higgins gives a realistic performance of so many people whose world is crashing in on them but can't express it to those that he cares about.
Yeah. I'm fine. I'll be a little late.
You sound okay.
Oh, no, I'm fine, Jen. But the Department of Health politics is all...
I love you.
Yeah, of course you do.
They did.
He eventually calls the number on the baby scan, which leads him to talking to the pimp of the woman he had sex with, downplaying how non-important he is.
You do a mission for me, yeah?
Mission? What?
You get my own pregnant. You think this is a game? We play a game. It's my game. I have friends. Commission for my friends, yeah? You do what we say. Or that's not your life. Let's go forward.
Being given a possible way out for doing what they say, he takes a sip of his drink and drains the rest. Unlike the other characters who are slowly involved in the conspiracy, Dugdale is already knee-deep in it. He never had a chance to say no to begin with. Him and Ian are probably the most similar characters in the series, having the biggest redemption arc between them. The only starting difference is Ian is a cocky extrovert, and Dugdale is the equivalent of Chicken Little, thinking the entire sky's going to be empty. We next see Corvat, a pharmaceutical company, where they try to convince him and his boss to buy a stock of Russian flu vaccine. Corvat predicted it will kill hundreds of thousands.
Damn, this is really ahead of its time, am I right, guys?
And the framing here just makes Dugdale look even more insignificant, not even in focus while his boss fronts the conversation, until he has to take a call and Dugdale is all on his own.
You should persuade him to take it. You should make it your mission. My mission?
It's your mission. This world means something to you, Dugdale. All of us have a mission in life. This is yours. Understand? Do you fucking understand your mission?
I just love the exaggerated sounds used here as well, like the leather of the chair as the CEO leans back into it, or the bag from being opened looking deflated when Grant stole the manuscript from it. Scenes shot in Corvat feel alien and isolated. Even a receptionist walking from one side of the frame to the other, it just feels so unnatural. This scene alone tells us how powerful this group is. If the CEO of a billion-dollar biotech firm is repeating what a Russian pimp said, who else is in their pocket? And this is Utopia's biggest strength, never playing its full hand, which, sounds pretty bad. Imagine how many shows end on a cliffhanger to bait you into the next season, but Utopia only explains itself when it needs to. You're always wondering who's part of the conspiracy and who's just a random extra that wasn't even paid to appear in the shot. Dugdale now has to sign off on ordering the Russian flu vaccine. The main opinion is Russian flu is so harmless, it's a waste of money, and no one apart from Korvat is worried about it. There's this great bit where he's like pathetically trying to hide the name of the document because he knows no one would actually sign off on this, trying to cover it with his thumb and then using binders to hide the name. And when he takes it to his boss to sign off, constantly brings up dead talk and pointless conversations, hopefully being enough of a nuisance, he signs it off without reading. It shows how cowardly but also how resourceful Dugdale is.
Joe, can't conceive. I don't know what to do. Greg, I think if I speak right, crack. If you need to take some time, I don't. Thank you, but I don't.
When the vaccine is ordered, everyone calls it madness, and he's left alone to deal with the fallout. His boss has had to resign, and he gets chewed out.
He signed off on it. I thought he wanted it. He signed. He's fucking resigning, Michael. He's fucking losing his job.
His boss's replacement, a man called Jeff. Don't do the bit. Don't do the bit. Leave 2012 back there, okay? Don't do the bit. Jeff wanted his boss's job and called him earlier to get him out of the room so the Korvat CEO could brief Dugdale. Initially he seems confused as to why his old boss would sign off on such a strange vaccine, but then turns around to say this.
As you want. Is she good? It's a little wind. I need someone like you. Someone smart. Someone who knows to do the right things. What is it they say? Mission accomplished.
We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray.
This is exactly how the conspiracy works. It gets its cogs to do all the work without knowing the full context of why they're doing it. They're only told what they need to, which leaves most of them confused and isolated. Meanwhile, with the main group, they've stayed at Wilson's house and it's morning, so they've all gone their own separate